Hello, everyone, and welcome to our sixth and final session in American English Live Series 20. We are so excited to have each of you with us here today. I am Dr. Darlene Wiggins Dockery, and I will be with you today. And joining us behind the scenes is my colleague, Elena, who will be helping to answer your questions and responding to your comments during the session. Let's begin today with the wonderful comments from our most recent webinar, Adventures in Teaching Intercultural Listening, with Johnny Lynn Hill. So we heard from Rita May from the Philippines, who said, this session on intercultural listening was a game changer. I learned practical strategies to equip my students for successful communication in today's diverse world. So thank you, Rita May, for sharing that comment with us. We also heard from Giovanni from the Dominican Republic, who said, thanks for this webinar. Intercultural listening comprehension is not only key to active participation in an English speaking culture, but also in the academic and professional fields in the world. We also heard from Rashi Parashad from Turkey, who said, the session provided practical strategies to enhance my students' listening skills and cultural proficiency. The insights gained will significantly improve my teaching approach and will help create a more engaging and effective learning environment. So we love to hear from our teacher participants actively engaged in professional development. So please continue to share your thoughts about our webinars and by offering feedback in our end of session quiz or by emailing us at americanenglishwebinars@fhi360.org. We may feature one of your comments in our next session. Throughout Series 20, we have explored a variety of strategies for developing listening skills in the English language classroom. We hope you have been able to use the practical ideas that we've shared. So here's what you can expect today. The session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present materials, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. Please share your thoughts using the comments feature or the chat box. When our session comes to a close, you will have the opportunity to receive a digital badge for participation. At the end of the webinar, we'll share a link in the comments. Click on that link and complete a short quiz about today's session. You must answer 2 out of 3 questions correctly on the first try to receive your badge. So if you successfully pass the quiz on your first attempt, you can expect to get your badge within about a week via email. And we are thrilled to announce our lineup for American English Live Series 21, which begins September 11th. We'll explore topics related to building academic skills for success and assessment in the EFL classroom. You can use the link being shared in the comments to receive reminders about Series 21 events. We can't wait to learn with you all then. And now, for today's webinar, using online videos to develop students' listening skills. Online video content is incredibly rich source material for English listening lessons. Free online videos address a range of topics, reflect a variety of English accents, and illustrate authentic use of vocabulary and idioms, making them an invaluable source of language input for English language learners. So, how can English teachers use these videos to help develop students' listening skills? In this webinar, we'll look at a process for creating high quality listening lessons using online videos. We'll discuss how to find appropriate videos, how to incorporate them into effective lesson plans, and how to teach those lessons in different types of classrooms. Along the way, teachers will have opportunities to contribute their ideas during a demonstration of the lesson planning process. And we are pleased to introduce our presenter, Jeremy Beal. Jeremy is a curriculum designer and English language teacher with over a decade of experience working in the US and abroad. He began his career in the field of language learning with 4 years in Indonesia, where he first realized his passion for language and culture. He later returned to Indonesia as a U.S. Department of State English Language Fellow, teaching for 3 years at a national university in the city of Manado. He currently teaches for the Software House in Poland, where he trains professionals to better communicate with their international clients. In addition to teaching overseas, Jeremy has taught English classes at several schools in Southern California. He holds a master's degree in TESOL from Beal University. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Darlene, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight or today. I'm very excited about today's topic because for the past several years, I've often used online videos in my classes, and I believe they have had great benefits for my students. So today, I'd like to share my process for planning lessons using online videos. I hope that this webinar will equip you with some new knowledge and techniques that will help you use online videos effectively with your own students. Let's start by talking about two different types of online videos. The first type are authentic English language videos. These are videos designed for a general English-speaking audience, so they're not created specifically for English language learners. Now, the second type of video are called English language learner videos. And these are the kinds that you might find in your curriculum or in your textbooks. You can also find them on websites specifically for English language learners. And so they've been made especially to help people learn language. In this webinar, we'll focus on using authentic English language videos because of the many benefits that they offer. So before we go any further, I'd like us to brainstorm together, and I'd like to hear some ideas. What do you think is a benefit of using authentic English language videos in a listening lesson? Go ahead and type an idea in the chat.
Okay, so what is a benefit of using authentic English language videos in a listening lesson? I'm sure our participants are going to share with us many benefits, Jeremy. So let's see what responses we have received so far. Well, while we're waiting for responses, Raquel said, happy to be a part of such great chances for professional improvement. So we have participants who are happy to be here. We also have heard from Manuel in response to our brainstorm. And Manuel says, exposing students to authentic accents is a benefit. Nadia said, developing students' interest with goals. Maki said, getting random vocabularies. Ting said, real accent and English speed of speaking. Zaim said, pronunciation as well as learning new words. And then we heard from Iram, who said, it is good to show learners how languages evolve and constantly change. So, those are some of the responses we have received. Back to
Oh,
you,
right.
Jeremy.
Great. Thank you, Darlene. Yeah, those are great. And all of those responses all point to the fact that authentic English language videos show us how people really speak English. Um, when you watch an authentic video, the speech is sometimes it's messy. When we talk to each other in English, we use fillers like like. We often repeat ourselves. Sometimes we're not always exactly clear. Our grammar can have some mistakes in it. And authentic English language videos show that, the way that people really talk. So it's useful for your students to hear that and get used to that.
Mhm.
Um, some of you mentioned accents. So watching these videos prepares you for a variety of accents, which prepares students for real world English use, where you do hear people from all over the world speaking English. Another benefit is that authentic videos are current. People are constantly uploading new videos, new content, so you can always find something relevant. You can find something related to current events or anything that your students might be interested in. Now, this is a little different from textbook videos, where the videos will go out of date after a couple of years. Finally, these videos are accessible. They're free to access. They're available to both students and teachers, so your students can watch these at home also, and you can access them on any device. You don't need a computer. You can access these on your phone or other devices as well. Now that we've established the benefits of using authentic online videos, let's look at an overview of today's webinar. I'm going to go through 3 different stages to using online videos. The first is finding a video. After that, you'll need to analyze your video. And then finally, that will lead into creating a listening lesson. So let's begin with finding a video. In my opinion, this is the hardest part. It can be very difficult to find a video that fits your students' needs and interests, and to narrow down the vast number of videos on the internet to find one that will work well for your class. I've tried various approaches to finding a video, and so I'd like to share with you 4 that you can try. Um, the first one is to search for a specific topic. Now, this one's great if you're looking for current events, something that you just heard about in the news that you think your students would be interested in, or topics maybe that are related to your textbook, or topics that your students are already interested in. It can be a very quick way to find a video. The second approach is to browse your favorite channels and websites. If once you've been using online videos in your classes, you'll start to find certain channels, certain websites that consistently have good videos. So this is a really great option when you don't have a specific topic in mind. The third approach is just a daily search to save videos that you find in everyday life. So this is a great option if you're the type of person who likes to browse like YouTube or other websites in your spare time watching videos. When you see a video that your students might be interested in or might be good for your class, bookmark that video and you can look at it later to decide whether to use it in a lesson or not. Now, finally, if all else fails, you could try a random search, just looking at the feed, your feed on a video website. And this one is the most time consuming. I don't recommend this one because in my opinion, or in my experience, it's the least effective way to find a good video. So now, if you often use videos in your classes already, you probably have some good sources. And I'd love it if you would share either a website or a channel that you go to find videos for your classes, along with the age of the students you teach, whether you teach children, teens, or adults. So for example, you could write, in the chat CNBC International. That's the name of a channel that I use, and adults, because I teach adults there. So please share a source where you find good videos for your students.
Okay, Jeremy. So we've already heard from Sheknaza, who works with adults. And so TED Talks are what Sheknaza uses as a source. We heard from Shazia, who says VidMate and YouTube. We have also heard from Juan Pablo, who said Khan Academy. Jacqueline said Rachel's English on YouTube, works with adults. And then Tien uses YouTube and super simple songs. Rosie says YouTube and works with teens. Hebert says History Channel and National Geographic. And finally, Wabad says my own videos. So those are some of the sources that our participants have shared with us.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've used some of those same sources as well. And I'd like to share a few more that you might want to try as you're looking for videos for your students. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to explain all of the sources that are on this slide, but the others will be available on the website Resource Center for you to access anytime. For kids, we've got these two PBS websites, which are great, and then also Lingua House. And I'll just explain a little bit about Lingua House. This is a website, like many other websites, that's made for English teachers. And so most lessons require a paid membership, but the videos in the lessons are free to download because they come from open sources on the internet. So I sometimes use this as a source of ideas when I'm not quite sure what video topic that I want to find. And I can also often find good videos here. They also have a series for teens and adults and a business English series. Now, if you primarily teach teens and adults, of course, we've got Voice of America and TED, which one of you mentioned. Another one I'd like to talk about is Great Big Story. This one's also great when you don't have a specific topic in mind. It has hundreds of very unique videos on various topics, very high interest videos with good quality, and they produce new videos every week. So I've often found good videos to use in my classes from that website. And then you can try some of these other ones as well. All of them are great sources for videos. Well, next let's talk about how to use search terms to find a good video. This is a screenshot from the VOA website. Now, I first searched for climate change to find a video related to climate change, but this resulted in thousands of matches. So to narrow it down, I searched for climate change in Africa, as you can see here. This narrowed the results down quite a bit. But VOA's website also includes lots of articles, audio files, and other file types. So I also needed to click on the video option. Finally, this reduced the number of results to just 3 videos. So this is really helpful, as you can now quickly decide if one of these videos will work for you, or if you need to search on a different website. So to sum up, if you get too many results with a search, think of how you can use a more specific search term. And then it can also be helpful to look at a website's filters to help you narrow down the search results. Well, once you've found a potential video, the next step is to decide if it will work for your class. You'll need to watch the video and evaluate it based on certain criteria. So now I'd like us to brainstorm together again. What are some criteria that you would use to decide if a video is appropriate for your class? Type some ideas in the chat. While
Okay.
people are typing, yeah, Darlene, I
Go
wanted to
ahead.
ask you, yeah, what criteria would you use to choose a video for your students?
When I was in the classroom, I would think about the age appropriateness of the video. I would think about the skill level of my students. And also, I would think about interest. Does it connect to the course content and the goals of the class? So those are some of my considerations in choosing a video.
Great.
So let's see what our participants have to say. Hmm. Shaknaza said profile. So again, what are the goals of the age appropriateness or the skill level appropriateness of the learner? Juan Pablo said the English level of the class. Um, and then Marin said if there is a license, is a consideration of what is being chosen. So those are some of the responses.
Okay, great. Yeah, some of those are ones that I'm going to talk about next. So let's look at the criteria that I use. The first one is whether it's relevant and appropriate for my students. So I ask questions like, will this video be interesting for my students? Is it culturally appropriate? Is it age appropriate? And if a video isn't relevant or appropriate, then I won't use it. Well, the next criterion is how difficult a video will be for my students. So is it too hard? Is it too easy? Ideally, I try to find a video where my students will understand most of what is said in the video, but still have a little room to grow. How do you know if a video is too hard? One way is to look at the vocabulary, the new vocabulary. So it's hard to find research to say exactly how many new words students can handle in a video, but based on one study, at least, this good study, about maximum 5 new words per minute is as high as you want to go. And fewer new words per minute is probably good too. It can be hard to estimate what words will be new for your students. But so as I listen, if I hear lots of advanced vocabulary or lots of uncommon words that are not used very frequently, then I think, okay, this might be a little hard for my students. I also consider the rate of speech. That affects difficulty. I consider the accent of the speakers. Now, a variety of accents is good. It's good to have your students listen to many different kinds of English accents. But if the speaker in the video has too strong of an accent, it could make listening difficult and frustrating for learners. Some videos, though, have multiple speakers with different accents. So, for example, with news videos, the reporter often uses a standard English accent, and the people they interview use more local or different kinds of accents. So this kind of video is really good practice because students can understand the main points and the questions from the reporter, and then also get practice hearing different accents as well. Finally, I consider the length of the video. So in general, a shorter video is going to be easier. But if a video is too long, oftentimes you can cut it to a manageable length and just choose one excerpt from the video to use with your class. So my final criterion is the teaching objectives. What teaching objectives can I draw from a video? Now, if my main objective is for students to understand the main ideas of the video, this criterion might be less important. But usually I want my students to learn something specific as they listen, such as a pronunciation feature that will help them understand spoken English, or maybe some new vocabulary. This also helps students feel like they are making progress, because it's much easier to say, I learned 3 new words today, than it is to say, my listening skills increased by 1% today. So having specific features to focus on from a video is very good for student motivation. So as I evaluate a video, I think about any useful words, phrases, phrasal verbs, and idioms that are in the video. I look at what pronunciation features are in the video. Are the speakers linking words together? Are they changing the sounds of words as they speak quickly? I look at grammatical forms and also speaking functions, like maybe a speaker is making a request in the video, or maybe some speaker is apologizing, and we can focus on the language for apologizing later as we talk about the video. So to sum up, if a video is relevant and appropriate, is at the right level of difficulty, and contains some language features that my students can learn from, then I'll use it in my class. Now, once you've found a good video, the next step is to analyze it. And this will make it easy to plan an effective lesson later on. Analyzing a video involves identifying the main ideas and important details, selecting useful vocabulary, and identifying any trouble spots, places that your students will find difficult to understand. I usually listen to a video a couple times. First, I identify main ideas and details, and then I listen again, and I look at the transcript if it's available to find useful vocabulary to teach. I also try to predict which parts of the video will be difficult for my students to understand. I'd like to demonstrate this process with a video that might be appropriate for teenage or adult learners. We'll go through each step together so you can try it out and see how I would typically analyze a video. So the first thing that I do is write down any main ideas and details that I hear. I usually do this at the same time, but for this webinar, we'll start by listening just for main ideas. The video for this demonstration is called People Pleaser. A people pleaser is someone who always tries to make others happy. In this video, a student named Lakeisha has conversations with several people. As you listen to the video, I'd like you to write down what they talk about. You don't need to type this in the chat, but just take notes on your own on a piece of paper. So let's listen to this video.
Hello? Hi, Mrs. Gonzalez. Sure, I can work at the store tonight. What time? 6 to 2? Okay, I'll be there. You're welcome.
Lakeisha, I need a favor. I have 3 papers to finish plus a midterm this week. Can you take over that story I'm writing for the student newspaper? I can give you my notes, I just don't have time to write it.
I've got a couple of midterms and a paper too, but sure, I can fit that in.
Thanks so much. It's been so stressful to get everything done.
Hey, don't worry.
I'll send you my notes as soon as I get home. It's due on Friday. Thanks, Lakeisha.
Hi. Lakeisha, I am so glad that I found you.
What's up?
I got my car towed to the garage, but I need to pick it up. Can you drive me?
I have a shift at the store tonight from 6 to 2, but I can drive you over to the garage now.
Thank you.
All right. So what did they talk about? Well, in this video, each person asks Lakeisha to do something for them. And these requests are the main ideas. So the first person calls her on the phone and asks if she'll work at the store tonight. And then the second person asks if she'll finish writing a story for the student newspaper. And then the last person asks if she will drive him to the garage to pick up his car. Now, the other main idea is her response to each request. So how does she respond? Well, she says yes to every request because she's a people pleaser. She wants to keep everybody happy. Now, when I analyze a video, I also write down any important details. So one kind of detail is any important information related to the main ideas from the video. So for example, in this video, when Lakeisha's friend asks her to finish her newspaper story, she says the story is due on Friday. So that's one detail. You can also identify details related to your lesson objectives. So for example, if your lesson objective is for students to listen for numbers, a detail in this video would be the times that Lakeisha agreed to work, from 6 to 2. Or maybe your objective is to have students listen to the language used for making requests. In that case, you could write down the phrases that were used in the video, like, I need a favor, and can you? Now, after you've analyzed your video for main ideas and details, the next step is to listen for vocabulary. When you listen for vocabulary, listen for useful words your students need to know in order to understand the video. You can choose single words, but it's also important to look for phrases. So listen for collocations like have a midterm. Listen for phrasal verbs like take over, and also idioms like people pleaser. Well, let's listen again to the excerpt we heard before. And this time in the chat, I'd like you to type any vocabulary you think might be new for your students, for teenage or adult level students in this case. So let's listen once more.
Hello? Hi, Mrs. Gonzalez. Sure, I can work at the store tonight. What time? 6 to 2? Okay, I'll be there. You're welcome.
Lakeisha, I need a favor. I have 3 papers to finish plus a midterm this week. Can you take over that story I'm writing for the student newspaper? I can give you my notes, I just don't have time to write it.
I've got a couple of midterms and a paper too, but sure, I can fit that in.
Thanks so much. It's been so stressful to get everything done.
Hey, don't worry.
I'll send you my notes as soon as I get home. It's due on Friday. Thanks, Lakeisha.
Hi. Lakisha, I am so glad that I found you.
What's up?
I got my car towed to the garage, but I need to pick it up. Can you drive me?
I have a shift at the store tonight from 6 to 2, but I can drive you over to the garage now.
Thank you.
All right, well, here are some of the words and phrases that I wrote down. And of course, your list could be different depending on the level of your students. So I wrote the phrasal verb take over, then midterms, fit something in, and then the words do, towed, garage, and shift. And I see some others in the chat. I see what's up and some other phrases that were used in the video as well. So great. Now, once you've listed some possible vocabulary items, you can decide which ones to teach in your lesson. You don't need to teach every new word. Instead, just focus on the most useful words. This includes words your students need to know to understand main ideas and important details from the video. So for example, in our video, one of the speakers asked Lakeisha to take over her story for the student newspaper. Take over is a phrasal verb that means to finish something that someone else started. Students won't be able to understand what Lakeisha's friend is asking without knowing the meaning of this phrase. So it will be important to teach your students this word. Another important word to know is garage, since one of Lakeisha's friends asks her to take him to the garage to pick up his car. Now, since these words are important for understanding the main ideas, I would pre-teach them during the first part of my lesson before students listen. But you can ignore less common and less useful words. So in this list, I might ignore the word towed, which means to pull a car behind a truck. This word is not very common, and students don't really need to know the meaning to understand the main ideas from the video. So now that we've analyzed our video and identified main ideas, details, and vocabulary, it's time to create our lesson plan. For me, this is usually the easiest and fastest part of the process. Now, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the PWP lesson plan. PWP stands for pre-listening, while listening, and post-listening. It's sometimes called PDP, where D stands for daring listening. It's a very useful listening lesson framework that makes a listening lesson effective and also easy to plan. I usually design the while listening tasks first, since this is the heart of the lesson. So in the while listening stage, we'll listen more than one time. And during the first listening, students will focus on main ideas. And in the second listening and subsequent listenings, they'll focus on details. You also want to assess students' comprehension during this phase, find out how much of the listening they understand, and then address any trouble spots and help the students understand the parts that were difficult for them. So let's start designing our lesson plan by designing the main idea tasks. Now, the purpose of main idea tasks is to help students listen for the overall topic and important ideas of the video, and to give them a focused task so their minds don't wander while they listen the first time. As you design main idea tasks, try to cover the whole video, not just one part of it. And you also want to make these fairly easy so students can succeed. Think about what someone would reasonably be able to complete while they are listening to the video. Let's look at a couple examples. So this first one is a checklist task where you check off the ideas you hear. In our video from earlier, people made 3 requests. Can you remember what they were? Darlene, do you remember what the 3 requests were?
Yes, I do. The first one was to take over a shift at the store. The second was to write an article or take over the writing of the article for the person. And the third was to give someone a ride to pick up their car from the garage.
Yeah, exactly right. So these are the 3 main ideas from the video. And so this task gets right to those main ideas. It's not too hard, and most students will be able to complete this by hearing keywords like store, newspaper story, and garage. You can format main idea tasks in different ways to fit your students' ability. So for this task, I used the exact words and phrases as in the video. But if you want to make it harder for more advanced students, you could paraphrase the answer choices. So instead of work at a store, you could say take a work shift. Instead of take over a newspaper story, you could write finish writing a story. And here I've also changed drive someone to a garage to give someone a ride. And if you have even more advanced students, you might give your students an open-ended question. So for this task, you can just ask them to write the 3 requests themselves. Just keep in mind that when the students have to write more as they listen, you might need to play the video more than once because the students may miss some of the information while they're writing. Of course, there's one other main idea in this video, how Lakeisha responds to each request. So here's an example of a simple listening task to focus on her responses. Now, this is a simple, traditional, multiple choice task. Students just select yes, no, or maybe next to each person here. So the question is, how does Lakeisha respond to each request? And then we have speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, and students select how each one responded. Now, Lakeisha says yes to everybody in the video, so the answer is the same for each of these requests. It's also worth thinking about how you want students to respond to this kind of task. Instead of having them write their answer, they could give thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no, and hold their hand flat for maybe. And that way you as the teacher would be able to see who understood the correct answers in your class. Now, once you've designed the main idea tasks, the next step is to design tasks that focus on details. For detailed tasks, you can use the same types of activities as you would for main ideas. So let's take a look at some possible task types. Some tasks only require simple responses, like multiple choice, true, false, and matching. These are quick tasks that students can do as they listen, and they're good for all levels of students. Other tasks, like open-ended questions and note-taking, require complex responses. These can be a better measure of what students understand as they listen, because you're not giving them the answers, but they also require speaking and writing skills. So these are often better for intermediate or more advanced students. A couple of things to consider. You want to design tasks that students can do while they listen. You're trying to get them to listen actively. So be sure to give them the tasks before they listen, not after. Otherwise, your tasks will be a memory test instead of a listening activity. You also need to consider the time involved. The more tasks you assign, the more times students will need to listen to the video. Now, lots of repetition is good practice. It's great to watch the video multiple times, but you also need to think about the time you have available in your lesson. Finally, consider your lesson objectives. If you want students to practice listening for numbers, include some tasks with numbers. If you want to focus on vocabulary, design tasks where students have to understand specific words. Let's look at an example detailed task for our video. So for this task, I've designed simple questions. Notice how each question asks when something happens. My lesson objective here is for students to listen for times. So the questions are, number one, when is Lakeisha's work shift? Number two, when is the newspaper story due? And number three, when will Lakeisha drive her friend to the garage? Now, here are the answers. Although my questions are open-ended to an extent, they only require simple responses. So this task is not too difficult, and it's very quick for students to do as they watch the video. If I wanted to make this easier, though, I could use a different task. So now I'd like you to reflect for a moment. How could you change this task to make it easier for lower level students? Go ahead and type an idea in the chat. And then as we wait, Darlene, how would you make this one easier for your students?
One thing I might do is give them choices, give them words to choose from, so that they are listening for specific words. Or I could make it a matching activity. So again, that they have something, some vocabulary to work with and to listen for as they do the activity.
Okay, great, nice. Let's see, what are some of the responses from the teachers here?
Let's see. We heard from Arsalan, who said, ask them to underline the words they already know. We heard from Fuak, who says, make them yes or no questions. Jacqueline said, give choices. Gabby said, true or false statements. So again, as other responses come in, I did want to share a few comments with you, Jeremy. We heard from Catherine, who said, very interesting presentation. Gabby said, excellent. She loved the checklist idea. Ibrahim said, that's great, fitting the activity to all learning styles. And then we heard from Manuel in answer to the question, said yes, use yes or no questions. And Layla said using alternative questions in the task. So those are some of the, oh, and then pictures to match. That's Shaknaza.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your responses and comments. I think those ideas would work really well, limiting the choices that students have to answer the task. Now, some of you mentioned matching activities. So here's an example of a matching activity. On the left are the things that Lakeisha agreed to do, and on the right are the times that she agreed to do them. Notice that there are 3 things she agreed to, but I put 4 times on the right. So this is to make sure students have to listen for all 3 of the items. They can't just listen and hear the answers for 2 of them, and then they know the last answer because it's the only choice left. So it's helpful to provide an extra answer choice. Now, to complete this task, it's very simple. The students just have to draw a line to the correct time. Okay, so once you've designed all the while listening tasks, the next step is to move to the pre-listening stage. Now, there are 3 main purposes to the pre-listening stage. The first is to generate student interest. You want them interested and excited about the video they're going to watch, because then they're going to listen more closely and they'll benefit more from the lesson. Second, you want to activate background knowledge about the topic. So you want to find out what students already know, get them talking and thinking about what they already know about the topic, and that will set them up well to understand the listening better later on. And finally, if you want, and if it's important, you can preview vocabulary that students need to know in order to understand the important ideas. So in short, the pre-listening stage should prepare students to listen and to understand the video. Now, I'm sure that many of you have a lot of experience designing pre-listening tasks, so I'd like to hear some of your ideas. Design a pre-listening task for our video. Remember, the topic is a student who is a people pleaser. She always says yes when people ask her a favor. So let's focus on generating student interest and activating background knowledge. don't worry about previewing vocabulary, but what would be a good pre-listening task to generate student interest or activate background knowledge for this video? I'd love it if you could share an idea in the chat.
Okay, so we're thinking of pre-listening tasks you could use to generate student interest or activate background knowledge. So some of the responses, one thing that I do like to do or did like to do when I was in the classroom was to see if the students could connect to an experience that they had had that would be on the theme. So I like Alpha's example. Think of the qualities of a true friend, and then be able to compare that to what they see in the video. Then we have Jacqueline, who said, "How do you answer when a friend asks you for help?" Would be a good question to get the conversation or get them to thinking. Rosie said, I'd ask students about their reactions toward requests. And then Darakshan said, I will ask my students if they are people pleasers. Sana said, connect students' daily life to the topic. And for me, in watching that video, that really did connect to my experiences being a recovering people pleaser and having to learn that no is a complete sentence. So that one I could really relate to. And then Andrea said, I will introduce the term people pleaser. So those are some of the response. Oh, Muhammad said he'll begin with a funny short story. So those are some of the things our participants have shared with us. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Terrific. Those are some great ways to talk about what a people pleaser is and get students thinking about how they respond to requests. So that's a great setup for this video. I'll share a few ideas that I came up with as pre-listening tasks. So the first one here is to have students discuss in pairs or in a small group the questions, when was the last time someone asked you for a favor and how did you respond? So like one of you said, how do you respond to requests? That's the same idea here. Another task you could do is have students brainstorm the problems with being a people pleaser. And of course, you'd have to define the phrase people pleaser first, and then you can talk about some of those problems. And then a third option would be to have students take a poll. Which favors have you done for someone? And the choices here, I wrote loan someone money, give someone a ride, take over an assignment, help someone with their homework. So a couple of those are similar to ones in the video, so a good way to preview that. Now, I'd like you to think about the difficulty level of each of these tasks on the slide here. Which of these tasks is the easiest and which is the hardest? Which one requires the highest level of speaking? So I think the most advanced one is the discussion task. It's a totally open-ended question, so it requires good conversation skills to talk about. And then kind of in the middle is the brainstorming task. So here the students need to think of the right words and phrases to describe problems with being a people pleaser. But this is easier than having an open discussion. And the easiest task here is the poll, because students just need to select words from this list. So you can decide on a task based on the language ability of your students. And for mixed level classes, you might have your students do more than one of these. So for example, maybe you do the poll first, which is easy for all the students. And then you have students do the brainstorming activity, which is a bit more advanced. Now, you might also have noticed that I included one of the vocabulary items we looked at earlier in the poll activity. So look at choice C. I included the phrase take over in this activity. So this is a really quick way to preview new vocabulary without having to add a separate vocabulary activity. So it's a great way to save time because you don't want the pre-listening stage to be too long. You want lots of time for the while listening stage. Now, there are many ways to preview vocabulary, but that's for another webinar. So for now, we'll move on to the last part of the lesson, which is the post-listening stage. Now, the purpose of the post-listening stage is to build on the video to improve other language skills or to reinforce language features that students heard in the video. There are many ways to do this. It's very flexible. And so here are just a couple options. If you want to focus on language features, you could focus on some aspect of pronunciation or vocabulary or grammar. You could discuss ideas from the video. This is a good opportunity to exercise critical thinking. It's often effective to have students relate what they saw in the video to their own lives. And you could integrate other language skills, such as maybe you could have students write about the video topic or do some kind of speaking practice based on the video. So let's look at a post-listening idea that focuses on a language feature from the video. Now, this task is designed to help students understand fast speech. So I'd like you to try this. Now, at the top of the screen, you can see part of a conversation from the video. You'll need to listen to the excerpt and fill in the blanks. There will be 2 words in each blank. So let's take a moment to read the conversation excerpt first at the top of the screen. Friend, can you take over that story I'm writing for the student newspaper? I can give you my notes. I just don't have time to write it. Lakeisha, I've blank, couple of midterms, blank, paper 2, but sure, I can fit that in. Okay, so now let's listen and try to fill in each blank with 2 words.
Can you take over that story I'm writing for the student newspaper? I can give you my notes. I just don't have time to write it.
I've got a couple of midterms and a paper 2, but sure, I can fit that in.
Were you able to understand the words in the blanks? Well, here are the answers. This question or this task highlights how English speakers link words together. So in this case, the words got and in the first blank are combined. They're linked to sound like gotta. And then and are linked to sound like anda. So tasks like this can really help students improve their listening skills. Now, you might be saying, this seems like a while listening task, not a post-listening task. And I guess you're probably right. But you could follow this up with a true post-listening task by having your students practice linking words in speaking. So let's look at how to do that. In this task, students write 3 sentences about their assignments, and then they mark where to link words together and then practice saying their sentences. So for example, first students might write these 3 sentences. I've got a history paper and a math quiz. I have to read a chapter in my science book. And number 3, I have a group project in English class. After that, for the second step, they would draw lines to show what words to link together. So you can see here, got and are linked together to form gotta, and then and read and to form reada, and then have and will sound like hava. Now afterwards, I would have students practice saying their sentences and linking those words together. And this can prepare them for the next task, which is a short conversation activity. So in this next task, students have a short conversation with a partner to talk about the assignments that they wrote down earlier. Student A would ask their partner, what assignments do you have this week? And student B would answer by telling their assignments and linking words together, and then ask, what about you? Then students can switch partners, and you can have them do this as many times as you want to give them lots of speaking practice. So there are lots of other things you can do in the post-listening stage. I often have my students discuss the topic of the video and apply it to their own life, like I mentioned earlier. So maybe for this video, you could have your students talk or write about whether or not they are a people pleaser. And once you've planned your post-listening activities, there's only one more planning step. So the final step is just to get ready to teach your lesson plan. First, always download the video. Anytime you try to use the internet in class, it will always fail. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure that you can relate to that. So download the video first. And then this also has the benefit of avoiding ads because many video websites include ads and you don't want to be showing those to your students. Next, you can prepare the transcript. Highlight any answers to while listening tasks, mark the timings, and note any potential trouble spots. And then finally, you'll need to decide on the format. So if you teach online, decide how you'll show the video. Maybe you'll use Google Slides or PowerPoint or some other kind of software. And then decide how you'll share the tasks themselves. Will you share a document in some kind of document file, or will you copy and paste those tasks into the chat so they can see the chat while they watch the video? Now, if you're teaching in person, you can decide whether to use paper handouts or the whiteboard for those tasks, and then whether to project the video onto a screen, or maybe if you don't have a screen, you can just listen to audio using a phone. So once you've done all these, then you're ready to teach. So to sum up what we've covered today, there are 3 stages to using an online video in your class. First, you'll find the video and evaluate it according to the criteria we talked about earlier. You'll analyze the video for the main ideas, details, vocabulary, and trouble spots, and then plan your lesson. And if you do a PWP lesson, you'll plan main idea and detail tasks, and then a pre-listening and post-listening stage. Now, before we conclude today's webinar, take a moment to reflect on all the things we've discussed. Think about, based on what we've talked about today, what's one way that you plan to use online videos in your classes?
Okay, so in the interest of time, we do want you to reflect on this and let us know. You can put it in your quiz response, or as if you decide to send us an email, you can let us know in there as well. So we want to thank you, Jeremy, for sharing such helpful content on creating high-quality listening lessons using video content as our listening text. We'd also like to thank you, our audience, for your engagement and for your participation today. Please continue to share your ideas through social media and with your viewing groups after this session ends.